I was never meant to find. People always say that betrayal has a sound, a whispered phone call, a lipstick stain, a late-night text message. For me, it sounded like a printer. Just a quiet, ordinary printer humming in my husband's office while I was looking for a warranty folder. If someone had told me that one tiny piece of paper would destroy 12 years of marriage, I would have laughed. I trusted my husband more than I trusted myself. His name was Daniel, mine is Emma. We had been married for 12 years. We weren't one of those couples who posted perfect photos online or renewed our vows every anniversary. We were ordinary. We paid bills. We argued over whose turn it was to buy groceries. We forgot birthdays sometimes. We watched television until one of us fell asleep on the couch, and somehow that ordinary life made me feel safe. I never imagined I was living beside a man with secrets. "Emma!" Daniel called from downstairs. "I'm in your office. Did you find the insurance papers?" "Not yet. They should be in the grey cabinet. I've looked 3 times. He laughed. "Then you're looking like me." I rolled my eyes, very funny. His office was always a disaster. Folders everywhere, stacks of unopened mail, pens without ink, coffee mugs that somehow multiplied every week. I knelt beside the filing cabinet and pulled open another drawer. Nothing. Just old tax returns. Then I noticed a thin white envelope tucked behind the cabinet. That's strange. It looked like it had slipped into the gap months ago. I reached behind the cabinet and pulled it out. No stamp, no address, just Daniel's name written in black ink. I almost put it back. Almost. Then I remembered he had asked me to organise his paperwork. I opened it. Inside were several printed receipts. The first one looked boring. Wire transfer confirmation. Amount, $18,500. I frowned. What? I flipped to the second page. Another transfer, $22,000. Third page, $41,000. Fourth page, property closing payment. My heart skipped. Property? We hadn't bought a property. I knew every dollar we owned. We'd been saving for years because Daniel wanted to retire early. So what house? I kept reading. Then I saw a name, Sophia Carter. I froze. No, it couldn't be. Sophia, Daniel's ex-girlfriend. The woman he dated for almost 6 years before meeting me. The woman he once described as the biggest mistake of my life. I stared at the receipt again. Payee, Sophia Carter. Property closing contribution. Contribution? Contribution to what? I flipped another page. There it was. Purchase address. A beautiful neighborhood across town. The payment total made my stomach twist. Over $240,000 had been transferred over several months. I whispered, "No." Emma?" Daniel's footsteps echoed up the stairs. I shoved the papers back into the envelope instinctively. He appeared in the doorway. "There you are," he smiled. Then his eyes dropped to the envelope. The smile disappeared. "What are you holding?" My stomach tightened. "I found this behind your cabinet." His face turned completely pale. For 1 second, just one, he looked terrified. Then he forced a smile. "Oh," his voice sounded different. "I've been looking for those." I held the envelope tighter. "What are they?" He walked toward me. "Just business paperwork." I looked down. "Business?" "Yeah." I slowly pulled one receipt back out. "Business with Sophia?" Silence. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at me. Finally, he sighed. "It's not what you think. Every woman knows those words, and every woman hates hearing them." I laughed, a nervous, confused laugh. "Then tell me what I think." He rubbed his forehead. "Emma." "No." I held up the receipt. "Explain why your ex's name is on property payments." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. It was complicated. I felt my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "No, it really is. So uncomplicated it." He looked away. "I can't." "You can't?" "I promised." "You promised who?" Silence. "Sophia." The name hit me like a slap. "You promised Sophia? It wasn't like that." I stepped backward. "You made promises to another woman while married to me?" "Emma?" "Answer me." He reached for my hand. I pulled away. "I helped her." "Helped her with what?" He looked exhausted. "She needed somewhere to live." I blinked. So, you bought her a house? No. You paid for her house? He couldn't even say no. That told me everything. You actually did. It wasn't the whole house. Oh, thank God. My voice dripped with sarcasm. Only part of the house. He shut his eyes. It's different than it looks. I laughed again. Only this time, tears filled my eyes. Daniel, tell me exactly how paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for your ex's dream house looks. He whispered, I never wanted you to find out this way. Those words hurt even more than the receipts, not because of what they meant. Because they meant there had always been another way. He had planned to keep it from me forever. I walked past him. I need air. Emma, please, don't. He followed me downstairs. I'm trying to explain. When? When? He didn't answer. I grabbed my purse. Emma, I asked you one question. I know. When were you planning on telling your wife that you've been secretly sending hundreds of thousands of dollars to your ex? His shoulders dropped. I wasn't. There it was. The truth. Simple, honest, cruel. I wasn't, I nodded slowly. Thank you. For what? For finally telling me one true thing today. I walked out the front door before he could stop me. The cool evening air hit my face, but it didn't calm me. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. 12 years. Had I really known this man? Or had I only known the version of him he wanted me to see? I looked down at the copy of one receipt I had quietly slipped into my purse before leaving. At the bottom was a note I hadn't noticed before. Final closing payment. Congratulations on your dream home. Those 6 words echoed in my mind. Your dream home. Daniel had remembered her dream. Had he remembered mine? I started the engine, tears blurring my vision, unaware that this receipt was only the first piece of a much larger secret, one that would change everything I believed about my marriage. I didn't go to my sister's house. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't even know where I was driving. The city lights blurred through my tears as I kept driving with no destination in mind. Every traffic light seemed to last forever, giving my mind more time to replay the same scene. Daniel's pale face, the receipts, Sophia's name, and the 4 words I couldn't stop hearing. I wasn't going to. Not I forgot. Not I was scared. Not I wanted to tell you. He had admitted he never intended for me to know. That confession hurt more than any affair could have. Around 10 that night, my phone buzzed. Daniel calling. I let it ring. A minute later, another call. Then another. Finally, a text appeared. Open quote, Daniel, Emma, please come home. We need to talk. Close quote. Another message followed. Open quote, I'm begging you. Close quote. I stared at the screen before locking my phone. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel guilty for ignoring my husband. I checked into a small hotel on the other side of town. The young receptionist smiled politely. Just one night? I'm not sure. She handed me the room key. I hope tomorrow is better. I forced a smile. The room was quiet, too quiet. I placed the receipt on the bedside table and stared at it again. Something suddenly caught my attention. There was a bank account number printed beneath the wire transfer confirmation. If Daniel had been sending money from that account, why didn't I recognize it? We had one joint checking account, one savings account, one investment account. I knew every account we owned. So what account was this? My stomach tightened. Had he opened another account without telling me? If he could hide that, what else had he hidden? Sleep never came. At 6 in the morning, I walked into our bank, the same branch we'd used for years. The teller smiled warmly. Good morning, Mrs. Harper. Good morning. I need to review all accounts connected to my husband and me. She typed for a few seconds. Then her smile faded. I'm sorry. What is it? It appears Mr. Harper has another individual account. I felt the floor disappear beneath me. Another account? Yes. When was it opened? She looked at the screen again. About 7 years ago. 7 years. 7. That wasn't a recent mistake. That was a second financial life. I've never seen that account before. I'm afraid I can't provide details because your name isn't listed. Not even the balance? She shook her head apologetically. I'm sorry. I thanked her and walked outside. The morning air suddenly felt colder. 7 years. For 7 years my husband had hidden money from me. How many lies does it take before a marriage stops being a marriage? My phone rang again. This time it was my best friend, Claire. I answered immediately. Emma? I know. You sound awful. I found something. What happened? There was a long silence before I finally whispered, I think Daniel bought his ex a house. Claire didn't speak. For several seconds, all I could hear was her breathing. Then, he what? I explained everything. The receipts, the secret account, the transfers, Daniel's confession. When I finished, Claire said quietly, Emma, are you sure there isn't another explanation? I wanted there to be. But he admitted he was never going to tell me. Claire sighed. Where are you? Outside the bank. I'm coming. You don't have to. I'm already grabbing my keys. 30 minutes later, Claire wrapped me in the biggest hug I'd had in years. You haven't eaten, have you? I shook my head. Come on. She drove us to a small cafe we used to visit after work. Neither of us touched our coffee. So Claire said carefully, What are you going to do? I need answers. You already have some answers. No, I slid the receipt across the table. I know where the money went. I don't know why. Claire studied the paper, then she frowned. Emma? What? Look at this date. I leaned closer. The first transfer had been made almost 3 years earlier. 3 years. The same month Daniel had told me we'd have to postpone our vacation to Italy because money was tight. I remembered crying that night. He had held my hand and promised, one day we'll go. Instead, he'd sent tens of thousands of dollars somewhere else. Not to us. Not to our future. To Sophia. I felt sick. Claire looked at me carefully. What if we find out who owns the house? I blinked. What? Public property records. I stared at her. They're public. You can look up ownership. My heartbeat quickened. If Sophia really owned the house, there would be proof. And if Daniel's name appeared anywhere on those documents, then this secret was even bigger than I imagined. Another vehicle pulled into the driveway. My heart leaped into my throat. It was a black pickup truck. Claire and I instinctively ducked lower in our seats. The driver's door opened. A man climbed out. He looked to be in his early 40s, wearing jeans and a grey polo shirt. He carried a paper bag from a hardware store and smiled as the little girl ran toward him. Daddy! He laughed, setting the bag down just in time to catch her as she jumped into his arms. I blinked. Daddy? Claire looked at me. So, that's not Daniel. I slowly shook my head. No. The man kissed Sophia on the forehead, took 2 grocery bags from her hands, and together they walked into the house. It looked normal, like an ordinary family. There was no secret romance, no stolen glances, no sign that Daniel was part of their daily lives. That somehow made everything even more confusing. If they're a family, Claire whispered, why would Daniel pay for her house? I don't know. And why keep it from you? I had no answer. That evening, I finally drove home. The house was quiet. Daniel's car was in the driveway. He was waiting. The moment I stepped inside, he stood up from the kitchen table. His eyes were red. He looked like he hadn't slept. I was beginning to think you weren't coming back. I came for answers. I'll answer whatever you ask. I set my purse down. Then don't interrupt me, he nodded. I won't. I took a deep breath. I went to the bank. His shoulders stiffened. I know about the second account. His face fell. I drove to Sophia's house. He closed his eyes. I saw her. Silence. I saw her husband. His eyes opened. And I saw her daughter. He stared at me. You went there? Yes. I wish you hadn't. Why? Because now you're even more confused. I folded my arms. Daniel pulled out a chair. Please, sit. I'd rather stand. He nodded. I deserve that. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said quietly, you remember when my father died? I frowned. Of course. It was 8 years ago, I nodded. You remember the inheritance? Yes. His father had left him a substantial amount of money. We had agreed to invest most of it for our future. At least, that's what I thought. Daniel looked down at the table. There was more money than I told you about. My stomach tightened. How much more? He swallowed. Enough to buy a house. You lied about your inheritance? Yes. Why? Because before my father died, he asked me to do something. What? He wanted me to keep a promise. I frowned. What promise? Daniel's voice became barely a whisper. He wanted me to help Sophia. I felt my anger return instantly. Your father wanted you to support your ex-girlfriend? It wasn't because she was my ex. Then why? He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Because, before I met you, my father treated Sophia like a daughter. I said nothing. They stayed close after we broke up. He never told me that. I know. When he became sick, Sophia visited him every week. I blinked. What? Sometimes more than I did. The room became silent. My father worried about her future. She had lost her parents years earlier. She had no family. Before he died, he asked me to use part of my inheritance to help her if she ever needed it. I stared at him. And she needed a house. He nodded slowly. Years later, she called me. And? Her husband had lost his job. They were about to lose the house they had spent years saving for. I looked away. So you gave her the money? Yes. You gave away our future. It wasn't our savings. It was still money you hid from me. Yes. And you never thought your wife deserved to know? Daniel lowered his head. No. Then he corrected himself. I thought you deserved to know. But I was afraid. Afraid of what? Exactly this. I laughed bitterly. No, Daniel. He looked up. You weren't afraid of my reaction. You were afraid of the consequences of your own decision. He didn't argue, because he couldn't. I walked toward the stairs. Emma, I stopped without turning around. I never cheated on you. Tears filled my eyes. I believe you. His face showed a flicker of hope, but that's not the problem anymore. What is? I turned to face him. For 3 years, every time we talked about money, every dream we postponed, every sacrifice we made, my voice broke. You already knew you had chosen someone else over telling me the truth. Daniel's shoulders slumped. He finally understood. This wasn't just about the money. It was about 12 years of trust, and trust, once broken, isn't repaired with explanations. It's repaired with truth. The only question was whether the truth had come too late. The next morning, I woke up in our guest room. I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel standing in the kitchen, admitting he'd hidden an entire inheritance, opened a secret bank account, and spent years carrying out a promise he had never trusted me enough to share. The strange part was this. For the first time since finding the receipts, I didn't believe he was having an affair. I believed something else. I believed he had built our marriage on a lie, and somehow that felt just as painful. I walked downstairs just after 7. Daniel was sitting alone at the dining table with 2 mugs of coffee. One was already waiting for me. He looked up. I wasn't sure you'd come down. I live here. He nodded quietly. I made your coffee the way you like it. I sat down but didn't touch it. I've been thinking all night, I said. So have I. I want to see everything. His eyebrows lifted. Everything? The inheritance papers, the bank statements, every transfer, every email, every message between you and Sophia. He didn't hesitate. Okay, the answer surprised me. No arguments? No. No excuses? No. I've already lied enough. For the first time in 2 days, I saw something that looked like genuine regret. Not regret for getting caught, regret for the choices themselves. An hour later, our dining table was covered with folders. Daniel placed them in front of me one by one. The inheritance documents, the investment records, the transfers, the emails. There are no deleted messages, he said quietly. I didn't erase anything. I opened the first folder. Every transfer matched the receipts I'd found, every dollar, every date. Everything was real. Then I opened the emails. Most were painfully ordinary. Thank you. We couldn't have done this without you. The mortgage company accepted the payment. Please thank your father's memory for giving us another chance. None of them sounded romantic. None of them crossed the line. But one sentence stopped me cold. I still wish Emma knew the truth. I looked up. You hid this from me even after Sophia told you to tell me? Daniel closed his eyes. Yes. Why? Because every year it became harder. The longer you waited, the worse it became. I know. No, I said quietly. You only know now. Silence settled between us. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered, "Hello." A hesitant female voice came through the speaker. Emma? Yes. This is Sophia. My grip tightened on the phone. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she said, I know you probably never want to hear from me. You're right. I understand. So why are you calling? I only found out yesterday that you discovered everything. I looked across the room at Daniel. He hadn't heard the conversation. You didn't know he kept it from me? No, her answer came instantly. I believed he'd told you years ago, I frowned. You did? Every time I thanked him, I asked how you felt about helping us. My heart skipped. What did he say? He always said. She paused. He'd already discussed it with you. I closed my eyes. Another lie. Another unnecessary lie. Sophia continued. I never would have accepted the money if I'd known he was hiding it from you. I didn't answer. I know nothing I say can fix this. No, it can't. But I think you deserve to hear the whole story. What story? The one Daniel refuses to tell because he's ashamed. I glanced toward the living room. Daniel was staring out the window. He told me about his father's promise. That's only half of it, Sophia whispered. A chill ran through me. What do you mean? There was another reason he helped us. What reason? She took a deep breath. The money wasn't actually for me. I frowned. What? It was for someone else. My heart began to race. Who? There was a long silence. Then Sophia quietly said, my daughter. I froze. Every thought in my mind stopped at once. I looked through the doorway at Daniel. He still hadn't noticed I was on the phone. Sophia's voice trembled. Emma, before you believe the worst, I whispered, why would my husband give money for your daughter? Another long silence. Then she answered, because he believed he owed her father a debt that could never be repaid. I stared at Daniel, my pulse pounding in my ears. This wasn't the answer I'd expected. It was something far more complicated. And for the first time I realized the receipts were never the whole story. They were only the beginning. My husband couldn't hide. I couldn't breathe. Sophia's last words echoed in my ears. Open quote, he believed he owed her father a debt that could never be repaid. Close quote. I stared across the room at Daniel. He was standing by the living room window, looking out into the backyard with his hands in his pockets, completely unaware that I was on the phone with the woman whose name had nearly destroyed our marriage. I lowered my voice. What debt? Sophia hesitated. I don't think it's my place to tell you. You've already told me enough to know there's something else. I know. Then please. There was a long silence. Finally she whispered, ask Daniel about Michael. Michael? My husband. I saw him yesterday. He saved Daniel's life. My heart skipped. What? It happened years ago. Daniel never told me. I know. He never tells anyone. I closed my eyes. Nothing about my husband made sense anymore. I ended the call and walked slowly into the living room. Daniel turned when he heard my footsteps. You've been quiet. I just spoke to Sophia. The colour drained from his face. You, what? She called me. He swallowed hard. What did she say? She told me to ask you about Michael. For a moment, he looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. His shoulders slumped. So, you know? He nodded. I was hoping you never would. I felt anger rise inside me again. That's becoming a pattern with you. He looked down. I deserve that. Who is Michael? Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. It was 10 years ago. He rubbed his hands together nervously. I was driving home late after work. It was raining. I was exhausted. I looked at my phone for maybe 2 seconds. His voice cracked. When I looked back up, he stopped. I waited. There was another car. My stomach tightened. We crashed. He stared at the floor. I walked away with a broken arm. The other driver, his voice became almost inaudible, was Michael. I sat down slowly. He almost died. The room fell silent. I spent months blaming myself. What happened? Daniel nodded. Eventually. But because of the accident, he couldn't work for almost a year, I frowned. So you paid him? No. He refused every dollar. Why? He said accidents happen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He forgave you? With that, Daniel nodded slowly, completely. He even visited me after my surgery. I looked at him. And Sophia? They had just gotten married. They were struggling financially, but neither of them would ever accept money from me. I thought back to the receipts. So years later, when Michael lost his job, my father's promise, and my guilt, Daniel's eyes filled with tears. They all came together. So you secretly helped them? Yes, I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, the puzzle pieces began fitting together. Not perfectly, but enough to see the picture. Daniel hadn't been supporting an ex because he loved her. He had been trying to repay a debt he carried in silence. It explained the money, but it didn't excuse the lies. I looked him straight in the eyes. You know what hurts the most? He shook his head. You decided for me. What do you mean? You decided I couldn't handle the truth. He opened his mouth, then closed it. You never gave me the chance to understand, he whispered. I know. If you'd told me 10 years ago, I probably would have supported helping them. His eyes widened. But after years of lies, I shook my head. I don't know who you've allowed me to become. He buried his face in his hands. I'm so sorry. Those words sounded sincere, but sincerity couldn't erase years of deception. That evening, there was a knock at the front door. Daniel looked surprised. I wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door. Standing outside were Sophia, Michael, and the little girl. Michael held a small envelope in his hand. He looked directly at Daniel. I think it's time. Daniel's face turned pale. What are you doing here? Michael stepped inside, fixing something that should have been fixed years ago. He placed the envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a cashier's check. Daniel stared at the amount. It was the first repayment of the money he had secretly given them. Michael said quietly, You carried this burden long enough. Sophia looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry your marriage paid the price for our second chance. I looked at the check, then at Daniel. This wasn't about money anymore. It never really had been. It was about trust, and whether two people who still loved each other could rebuild it after years of silence. The cashier's check stayed on the kitchen table. No one reached for it. No one spoke. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock that Daniel's mother had given us on our wedding day. It had always been a comforting sound. Now it felt like every second was asking the same question. Can trust ever come back? Michael was the first to break the silence. Emma, he said gently, I'm truly sorry. I looked at him. You don't owe me an apology. I do. He shook his head. If I'd known Daniel was keeping all of this from you, I would have returned every dollar years ago. Sophia nodded immediately. So would I. She wiped away a tear. We thought you knew. I believed them. For the first time since this nightmare began, I believed everyone in the room. Everyone, except the man I'd been married to for 12 years. Daniel finally looked at Michael. I can't accept this. Michael pushed the check back toward him. You have to. No, I helped because I wanted to, and we accepted because we thought your wife had agreed. Daniel lowered his head. I know. You took away her choice. Those words landed harder than anything else that had been said, because they were true. Daniel had never just hidden the money. He had hidden my voice. After Michael and Sophia left, the house felt painfully quiet. Daniel sat across from me. I don't expect forgiveness, I didn't answer. I don't even expect you to stay. Still, I said nothing. He looked around the house. I've been thinking about everything you said. I finally spoke. What did you realize? That I spent years trying to repay one mistake. He paused, while creating another. I nodded slowly. Exactly. I kept telling myself I was protecting you. You weren't protecting me. I know. You were protecting yourself. He closed his eyes. You're right. For the first time in days, he didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. He simply accepted the truth. The following week, I met with a lawyer. Not because I had decided to file for divorce, because I needed to understand my options. For the first time in years, I wanted decisions based on facts, not secrets. When I came home that afternoon, Daniel was waiting on the porch. He stood as I walked toward him. I've closed the secret account, I nodded. I transferred every remaining dollar into our joint account. He handed me a folder. Passwords, bank statements, investment records. Everything. No more secrets. I looked through the folder. Every account, every investment, every credit card, everything was there. It was the first completely honest thing he'd given me in years. Months passed. Healing wasn't dramatic. There wasn't one magical conversation that fixed our marriage. There were hundreds of small ones. Some lasted 5 minutes. Some lasted until sunrise. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes Daniel did. Sometimes we sat in silence because there was nothing left to say. Trust didn't return all at once. It returned one honest answer at a time. One Saturday morning, Daniel placed a brochure on the kitchen table. I looked down. It was for a small house overlooking a lake. I smiled sadly. You still remember. I remember every house you ever pointed at. You should have told me that years ago. I should have. He reached across the table but stopped before taking my hand. I'll never ask you to forget what I did. I know, but if you ever decide to trust me again, I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. For the first time in a long time, I reached across the table myself. I took his hand, not because everything was fixed, because rebuilding has to start somewhere. A year later, we moved into a modest home. Not the biggest, not the fanciest, but it was ours. Every payment, every receipt, every signature, every decision we made together. One evening while unpacking the last box, I found the very first receipt, the one that had fallen behind Daniel's filing cabinet. I stared at it for a long time. Then I walked outside. Daniel looked up from the garden. You okay? I smiled. I am now. I tore the receipt into tiny pieces and dropped it into the recycling bin. Not because the past didn't matter, it always would, but because I refused to let one piece of paper write the rest of my life. People often ask if one secret can destroy a marriage. The answer is yes. But I've learned another truth. A marriage rarely breaks because of a single lie. It breaks because of the silence that follows. If Daniel had trusted me with the truth from the beginning, we could have faced it together. Instead, he carried it alone until it became too heavy for both of us. Today, our marriage isn't perfect, neither are we. But every difficult conversation, every confession, and every honest answer has become another brick in a new foundation. The strongest relationships aren't the ones without mistakes. They're the ones where both people finally choose the truth, even when it's painful. And every time I hear a printer humming in the next room, I still remember the receipt that almost ended everything. Then I look at my husband, he looks back at me, and now there are no more secrets. The end.